Hello, everyone. Strange couple of days it's been, but I'm back in this little hot seat, which is interesting. First of all, got a few things I want to say. The first is to thank you so much for all of the messages of support and that have come my way. I really do appreciate it. And I know I've said, when people come up to me and say, you speak for the silent majority and all of that. And then I said, well, what's the point of speaking for a silent majority if it remains silent? But, we're all weak. Anyway, it's been a tricky couple of days, but I have brought a lot of it on myself. And I wanted to say a few things. First of all, I don't think there's any bonus really in this modern climate that we have of turning around and saying to people to be unforgiving and unhumble, even though that we're faced with a very, very powerful cancel mob who are, I'm now on my second cancellation. So that as a father raising two children and starting again is very, very worrying. But listen, what happened? So I think I'm going to provide a bit of context and then we'll get to what I want to say. Ava was talking to Jeff Norcott. Jeff Norcott was talking about male suicide on Politics Live, I think it was.
And I thought if you flipped those things, i.e. that it's the biggest cause of death for men under 50 is suicide, men are less likely to go to the doctors, men are less likely to maintain friendships. If that was for women, we'd often look at, well, why is society making that happen? Whereas with men, the argument is often, why are they doing that to themselves? So I'm not totally wedded to the idea, but the hostility towards the idea, I find it instructive.
I think that it feeds into the culture a little bit, this Minister for Men argument. In my mind, I think there should be a Minister for Mental Health, which would be all-encompassing. I mean, you've got something like 7 million children waiting for prescriptions for mental health at the moment. It's a crisis that's endemic throughout the country, not specific to men. And I think, a lot of ministers kind of bandy this about to sort of, I'm sorry, but make an enemy out of women. I think, not you, and I don't think...
The biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. That is an arresting statistic, and if that doesn't warrant specific attention, mental health is an umbrella issue.
I have to say that is also because women are unsuccessful. Feeds into that statistic.
But you have to change the fact that women still earn 15% less than men.
But no one's saying you can't do both.
No, exactly.
We can multitask.
Exactly. But most women experience sexual harassment.
But I totally accept that. I don't understand what it's happening again with this conversation where I'm talking about the specific issues that men face, and you're quoting other issues which I do not contest
Jeff,
on any level.
Here's a proposal.
I'm seeming very chippy now, aren't I? I didn't expect
Why don't
to...
you launch BASH, Blokes Against Sexual Harassment?
I felt that he was just demeaned every time he tried to raise it, and as somebody who knows men that have killed themselves, and suicide being the biggest killer of men under 50, you'd think that it was a big deal. It should be a big deal. And there was one moment where Ava said, I just feel it's being made into a culture war issue or something similar. And I thought that was really reprehensible because, male suicide is dreadful and it shouldn't be demeaned and it rips apart lives. And, men do store up their feelings and put on a brave face often. And suddenly, from nowhere, when you don't expect it, they end up taking their own lives, and that's unbelievably tragic. And I've seen it more than once. And so I took that very personally, which is a problem sometimes for me because I'm a very emotional person. That was then followed up by seeing a few other clips of Ava saying, that she wanted to see men terrified and frightened.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that healthy?
Yes, I think it is, actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
And I just sense this very strong dislike of men in general, which brewed in me for a couple of days, which is never good to do. You should not react off the cuff about these things, and you should allow measure into your tone when you're dealing with them. The overwhelming majority of men, 99% of men, are good, decent and honest people, and they love their partners and they support them and they encourage them in everything. And you see it in families across the country every single day, happily working together. And it's only these extremes that are dragged out. And I think that Ava shouldn't paint all men with one brush, in the same way as I shouldn't paint all women with one brush. So I was being particular about a certain ideologically driven type of woman. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't think it makes women happy to hate men. I don't think it makes society happy for women to hate men in the way that she so often does. And there's been an awful lot of talk of misogyny and very little of misandry. Anyway, then comes whichever night it was, Monday night, to go on with Dan. They said they wanted to do this story, so I was like, oh, okay. And they asked me what I was going to say, and I told them exactly what I was going to say. And I think people found it amusing, if I'm honest. They knew what I was going to say. I think I even did mention to the producer the use of the word shag, which I think is the world's worst word. But we'll get on to that. Anyway, I'm on with Dan. The point I should have made, if it wasn't 9:45 at night and, in that sort of banterish type way, was to say that men who are men, who are sort of traditionally stoic men, should probably avoid women who don't like them very much and who dismiss male suicide and who tweet things like, I want to be socially distanced from men and I will continue to wear a mask because of the greatest threat of all men. And I just felt the misandry of that was so much. So if I was going to be sensible and I could replay it, I would say any self-respecting man in 2023 would probably be well advised to avoid a woman who possessed that worldview, because she would probably cause him nothing but harm. But what I did say was, I wouldn't shag that and all that sort of stuff, which is not right. And it's demeaning to her, to Ava, so I'm sorry for demeaning you in that way, however angry I am with you still for doing that. And it demeans me because it's not representative of who I am. And also I'd like to add that I'm not saying any of this stuff because I know I'm going to get sacked tomorrow. I'm saying this stuff to clear my own conscience. So I just wanted to say that. I think, I do think that what's happened is that a narrative has been spun and a scapegoat has been found, which is me. And I don't think that that's been particularly fair. So we're living in a world which is getting progressively more divided. And my beliefs and all the things that I care about in terms of stuff like free speech are a way of getting people to talk to each other from across different political lines and different cultural lines and stuff like that. And I'm often successful, actually. I have some really good relationships with people who disagree with me. And I think that's really good. I would like to say to GB News that I think I'd like to add some context to why I posted Dan Wootton's, I reposted it. Dan was, as you probably know, Dan's been in a lot of hot water after a sort of Byline Times attack on him. And I provided Dan with probably several weeks of daily moral support and encouragement and the full access to free legal services that from the Bad Law Project, access to our lawyers and stuff like that. And also we organised a crowdfunder and we did all this and we worked really hard and we put everything aside and we did that. And I said to Dan quite clearly, I said, look, if they sack you without any, actual police involvement, just on the back of some complaints which are unfounded and the presumption of innocence isn't maintained, along with the right to express free speech, then I will walk out in solidarity with you. So when I read his response, throwing me under the bus, which has been quite a standard feature from GB News presenters, I decided that it was important that people had the context of that, because if that, one shouldn't behave in that way. I don't do disloyalty and I don't do cowardice. It's just not what I do. And I believe 100% in integrity, which is why I'm stumbling through this sort of apology to you. Anyway, one of the things is that we're looking at now is that GB News have opened themselves up for complete destruction, as far as I can tell, because they branded themselves as the home of free speech. Now, if you're the home of free speech, then what they could easily have done is say, look, we think what Laurence said was appalling and reprehensible, but he's got the right to say it. It's his opinion. Could he have expressed it better? Yes. And, and as I've said in this conversation with you, I could have expressed it better, and I should have expressed it better. But to see GB News do that, to cancel, what they're going to do, I think, well, I imagine they do, I'm 99.999% sure they are going to do, is sack us both tomorrow, or certainly I think they'll sack me, is they're opening themselves up to that mob, that cancellation mob, which was well whipped up, very well organised, and used by, as you can see, the frightening part of this is the story's been decided, I'm evil, and I've been there before, and every single member of every single political party are parroting the same line, which is more regulation, more suppression of free speech. So GB News had one opportunity, and that opportunity was to stand up and defend free speech, which they haven't done. So I think they now, as they brand themselves the home of free speech, they're actually the home of cancel culture, and they're probably more at risk of cancel culture than any other channel, which is so ironic, seeing as they dress themselves up as the home of free speech. The other thing that was interesting is that, when Gary Lineker made his Gary Lineker virtue points about refugees and all of this sort of stuff, he got a 7-day suspension, and everyone walked out with him. And sometimes I wondered to myself why we're losing this cultural war, which it is a cultural war. We're fighting against people who want to dismantle our culture entirely. They want to dismantle our history. They want to dismantle our education. They want anyone who happens to be born with white skin or celebrating British values, they want them to be demonized and hated. And that is their mission. So to me, it is a war. And why they're winning is because people come out in solidarity with them. So Ian Wrights of this world and all that sort of stuff walked out with Gary Lineker. And what we found at GB News, which is never surprising to me because I've worked in show business for 25 years, is someone was just so happy to get in the seat before it was even cool, while it was still warm. Look, I'm rambling, but I wanted to say that I regret the use of my language. I don't think it honours me, as I said, I don't think it honours me, and I don't think it honours my view of women. I'm not a misogynist on any level. So even the sex allegations of whatever won't be coming my way. I honour, love and respect women, and even those that I don't agree with. And I profoundly disagree with Ava and the growing misandry in this world, and the idea that, in order for the original idea of feminism was equality, which is a noble goal. Women have been suppressed, but this wave of feminism, whichever one we're on, fourth probably now, it's not about equality, it's about authority over men. In the same way as, there's like BLM is not really about, black people being struggling in some way. It's about revenge and money, obviously. And the Me Too movement was a witch hunt for people as well in lots of ways. So valuable movements like the underreporting of female sexual assault, which everyone is aware of and should be concerned about, and the underconvicting of sexual assault is done no favours by a woman standing up and saying, I want men to be terrified and I want them to be frightened. I've got 2 young boys, young men now, who are going to go out into a world, and God knows what relationships are going to be like in that world. There's been lots of good progress with stuff like consent, and that is very, very important. But I fear for my boys, so I don't like it when I hear someone saying that. I don't like anti-male sentiment. Society functions when you have strong men and strong women. As I said in my statement, I said the only bit that everyone misses out is I said that we need a society full of strong women with great ideas. What we don't need is a society full of victims who want to take revenge on men, because what happens then is you get a feminization of masculinity. This idea of toxic masculinity, but there is no toxic femininity. There is. All human beings can be toxic. It doesn't depend on your sex whatsoever. And actually, to get us out of this problem where we've got a lot of weak men, we do need some strong men. And in my own cack-handed way, I was trying to make the point that any self-respecting man should run a mile from Ava, which I actually, with all due respect, I stand by. I think what I'm trying to say is I could have expressed it in a better way. But so yeah, here we are. Takeaway points are to provide you the context of what happened, to express my apology to Ava for the language I used, whilst I maintain the sentiment that I possess still. I do think she's, it's a horrible thing. I don't, and to just say, yeah, hi and bye. I'll speak to you later. And remember, be curious. There's a lot more stories going on than the one that's shoved down your neck every day.